So close to 4 years later, the work of the State Capture Commission is done, but I'm afraid the work for eNCA reporter Govan Whittles was really taking all night as well. Govan, good to have you with us as well. I see you found the strongest cup of coffee in Johannesburg. You're going to need it. There's a lot to go through. Here's the question. What does this volume of the report say about Jacob Zuma?
That is the main question, isn't it? And there are a lot of findings and recommendations. I've had a look at the State Security Agency findings. What's interesting here is the way in which the Commission has investigated what happened at the State Security Agency, and Chief Justice Zondo finding that ministers of state security, Siyabonga Cwele, David Mahlobo, got involved directly in operations, including operations which was testimony about attempts to bribe judges, and the State Security Agency was used to block investigations into the Gupta family. This is where it comes back to former President Jacob Zuma. The Chief Justice finding that the former president may have wittingly or unwittingly aided state capture by blocking investigations into the Gupta family using the State Security Agency. That's one of the more explosive findings, and then one of the more controversial recommendations in response to what appears to be a summary of the political situation and the ANC's manner in which they choose leaders. The Chief Justice Raymond Zondo has recommended that the country elect a president directly, that the president prove his popularity with the people and that he's elected directly by the people. And the Chief Justice figuring that if this happens, the parties would then make that candidate the president of them. Those are just some of the findings and recommendations.
And considering we're a couple of years away from the next elections, that no doubt is going to be one of the biggest talking points. It's almost, you're not voting for the party, you're voting for the person. That's the recommendation coming out of that, isn't it? So what we now need to do as well is a lot of this circles back to the State Security Agency. Yes, it goes off into Arthur Fraser. Yes, it goes off into our current president, the former president, etc. But it all comes back to the SSA. It's scathing about SSA, isn't it?
It is indeed. And the Chief Justice recommending here that the former Director General, Arthur Fraser, as well as one of the former Deputy Director General, Thulani Dlombo, be investigated for criminal conduct relating to not only the Special Operations Project, which the report describes as a law unto itself, but also the Principal Agent Network Project, something which was instituted by Arthur Fraser and something for which he intended to cross-examine witnesses and justify his involvement thereof. But the Chief Justice saying that Mr. Fraser submitted documentation without signatures and proper dated. There's actually a paragraph which directly responds to Arthur Fraser's assertion that it was blocked from attending the State Capture Commission or cross-examining witnesses. And recommendations are that the Hawks continue their investigation into the Principal Agent Network, the PAN project, and that Arthur Fraser himself is investigated. So that is something that we expected, and it certainly is in the report.
Yeah, it is in that report as well. And I suppose because you've now used the word recommendations so many times, because that's exactly what this report and these findings are. They can make the findings and make the recommendations, but people are going to ask, Govan, aren't they? What happens with this next? And I know that's something that you're going to be following up on, but there's a lot to investigate if it actually happens. What's the state of play going forward?
What's good about this report and precedent set by the other volumes which have been delivered to the President already is that we've seen the National Prosecuting Authority and the Investigative Directorate commence prosecutions based on some evidence that has come out at the Zondo Commission. And similarly, that's what we expect here, not for them to wait 4 months until the President presents this report to Parliament and announces his intentions in terms of implementing. The Hawks and the NPA and the ID are able to pick up the recommendations of this report, if there's findings, move on that and the evidence that's been presented there and take people to court. Remember, Vincent Smith currently in court for alleged corruption relating to Bosasa, those revelations emanating from the Gupta leaks and the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. So they are showing that there is progress that have been made, even as this report, the final volume, has just been released to the President.
When we go back to 2019 and 2020, as we circle back again to the State Security Agency, a part of the report that I saw, and I certainly not read nearly as much as you have on this, is it goes back to 2019, 2020, the report saying that if the State Security Agency had done its job then, much of what we now know as state capture would have been investigated and dealt with before the Commission even got underway, if they just did their job.
and recommends that the law enforcement agencies investigate exactly why those investigations were blocked. Interesting, it notes testimony by Ambassador Mo Sheikh that recommended that to have a minister in charge of state security was not a good idea. It should be reporting directly to the presidency, as was envisaged in the Constitution. Of course, that's what the president has done there, but he's identified having a minister getting involved directly in the operations of the state security agency as one of the main problems. There certainly is a lot of harsh criticism against David Mahlobo and Siyabonga Twele, more for David Mahlobo and him getting involved in operations of the SSA.
We need to, before I say goodbye to you, just talk about the Guptas for a moment. There will be a big focus on this as well. Just to remind viewers that the evidence presented, and I recall it being 2011, is when it was made clear that the Guptas needed to be investigated as well. There's questions around why that never happened. And we're going back more than a decade now, aren't we?
It was not investigated because strings were pulled at the SSA. That's what the report finds, and the investigation was blocked on the basis that it would constitute a threat to national security. Chief Justice Zondo finding that that's not the case and that investigation should have gone ahead. He's recommended it does go ahead, and of course it did. It has gone ahead, and we're currently awaiting the extradition process, which the NPA says it is seized with at the moment.
Yeah, it's one of those could have, would have, should have moments. If it was done all those years ago, how a different conversation we might be having right now. Govan Whittles, thank you very much for coming in to speak to us. It's a lengthy report, this final volume. There is a lot to go through, but Govan Whittles just giving out what stands out, at least from a multiple view report. It's looking at various issues, including the former president's state capture, the SABC, etc., etc. There is a lot to go through. It's very lengthy, very wordy. Stay with us here on eNCA, of course. We'll continue to unpack it throughout the day.